Hey everybody, welcome to episode 1 of the self-care series. I am sitting here today with a good friend of mine, Andrew Stover. He's going to tell you a little bit about himself, but before we do that, I'll tell you he's an LCSW, a registered play therapist, has extensive experience working with kids. He has been a good friend of mine for 8 years now, and he is here to teach us a ton of stuff. So I hope you have a pen and paper to take notes. I know there's stuff I'm going to want to be learning. But thank you for joining us on this experience, and I hope you guys take away something. And thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us. And I can't wait to hear what you're going to share with us today.
Thank you, Katie. So as Katie said, I've known her for a good period of time. We've actually worked together right out of school. I was super excited to get an invitation to come on her little short mini series, and speaking with her and trying to figure out where I could go with it as far as what would be best for her followers and community. She's really working hard to create them the most. Being a registered play therapist, being a therapist in general, working with kids, adults, one of the biggest shifts that I've seen just in the last couple of weeks with my own practice is returning to a very basic question, which is, how do you check in with yourself? What does that look like? The frequency at which someone comes in and I may say, how are you feeling today? And some people know, right off the bat exactly how they're feeling. Some people don't. And it's this aspect of they know how they're feeling, but they don't realize that they're feeling what they are. So we in the therapy community call that, compartmentalization or deflection or avoidance. My primary focus in reintroducing that question of how do you check in with yourself is by starting with, how do you know how you're feeling on any given day? How do you know how you're feeling any given moment? So if you just take a moment and you say, how am I doing right now? So I could take a moment and, go inside. How am I feeling? What I notice is I'm a little jittery because I'm here talking to everybody, and that brings up some nerves. It's a very easy loop that you can go into with yourself throughout the day, as far as you just pause for a moment and you do that very stereotypical thing therapists ask you to do all the time, which is, how does that make you feel? Well, instead of how does it feel, you just ask yourself, how am I doing? You have to develop a baseline for that. You have to have understanding of what that looks like. What you feel today is going to be different tomorrow, and where you're at today is going to look very different tomorrow or the next day, or where you were 2 weeks ago. So that shifts or transitions into expectations. So where are you, and the expectation of where do you want to be. There's a play therapy saying for one of the models that I use for parents right now, child-parent relational therapy. It goes something like this: the most important thing will be what you do after what you did. So that is a statement of grace. That's how I essentially integrate that into my appointments with my parents and other adults. Is it's not about what's happened already. It's about what you do after you realize, okay, I'm not doing well. I'm not doing well. I'm not doing well. Well, what do I do now? I could sit and think about it, but we all know that we spend a lot of time already sitting and thinking about the fact that what's going on right now is not normal. We have no experiential basis for it. There's some practitioners, professionals, sociologists who would tell you this is what's identified as experiential blindness. So we have no historical precedent for being told to socially distance yourself from your social network, to socially distance yourself from your network of family members, your peers, your work peers. We have no precedence for this. The closest generation that really has any sort of context for it would be more than likely our elders, our grandparents. Uh, they have the stories, at the very least, from their parents of what it was like to go through some of these earlier pandemic viral diseases that spread quite quickly. So circling all the way back, I want to first say what you do to feel different. So if you're not doing well, there is an infinite number of options. So I could tell you, you need to focus on what you're eating. Health, the food you put in your body is an immediate way to increase your self-care. I could tell you exercise. Exercise is one of the most relevant and, quite honestly, simplistic ways to access this more physiological reframe of the emotions you're don't have necessarily the words to process through. So as a play therapist, we offer toys as this medium for kids to work out and organize the self-actualizing components to their story. So making sense of their story, making sense of, I am capable, I'm confident, I can do this. Yes, things happen. They put me in a place of feeling uneasy, but I am capable and confident of doing the things I need to do to make sense of all the crazy chaos. So all of that being said, coming all the way back to, you have to know where you are. So you have to know where you are in a given moment to know what it is you can utilize, or what it is expectation-wise is going to fit best for you. So if you're not in a place to go for a 2-mile walk, go for a 5-minute walk. You're not in a place to all of a sudden shift the entire way you're eating, because we've been asked to, really go out and prepare 2-3 weeks worth of meals and ingredients, and be mindful of what's in your house, but be mindful of the community around you. That's going to impact me saying, it's the perfect time to do keto, or it's the perfect time to really get on the pace. So that's where, again, knowing where you are. So expectation, can you be okay with, hey, let's have a healthy snack. Hey, let's be intentional, and we're going to make sure that breakfast is healthy. It's going to be fruits. It's going to be some proteins. It's going to be, again, ritual. So all of this now transitions to know where you are, make sure that the expectation is realistic for yourself. If I want to go run a marathon, I haven't run in 6 months. If I say I'm going to start training for a marathon and go run 10 miles today, I'm not going to be able to walk for the next 5 or 6 days. That's going to be very detrimental to me feeling any different. I may feel accomplished in the moment, but then tomorrow I'm going to feel very let down. I'm going to feel very deflated. So the expectations have to be adjusted. We have to be realistic. You have to know where you're at, and you register that, and you utilize where you're at, and you create the expectation. So it should never be about volume. It should be, you need upwards of 5 minutes to be intentional in a given day. 5 minutes of being very intentional. That could be intentional with the meal you make. It could be intentional with the exercise you do. It could be intentional with the music you're listening to, the writing you do. It could just be intentional time to say, I'm going to take these 5 minutes and I'm going to sit in a different room in the house that I don't spend much time in. It could be, I'm going to spend 5 minutes and intentionally just observe my kiddos. And I have a lot of my parents do this. I want you 5 minutes this week, different times, just have a notebook, and I want you to watch your kiddos, and I want you to just write down different characteristics that you notice. I want you to notice special features on their face. I want you to notice something that they did that was funny. And you just write this down, and it's intentional, and it's going to be a way for you to essentially create the experiential associations we're wanting, because we don't have them. So there is a silver lining to a lot of what's going on, which is the slate is clean. There's no model for what you need to be doing. So you do get to create it to be what fits best for you. And the final piece would be consistency. So whatever expectation you place on yourself needs to be something that you can be deliberate with. So one thing I do, and it's not universal to everybody, one thing I do deliberately, and this is very cliche, it's in any self-help book out there, what are the 10 things you should do to be successful? I make the bed in the morning and I eat the same thing for breakfast every morning, primarily because I enjoy it, but it's also predictable. And one of the big things that you're going to hear, whether it's through Katie's channel or other professionals out there, they're going to be talking about predictable schedules. They're going to be talking about routines. They're going to be talking about doing or finding ways to create a sense of normalcy and this new experience that you can't compare to other experiences you've had already. So no, you're not working from home. You're working from home during a crisis period. The kids are not doing homeschool. They are at home doing school during a crisis. And that's what this is. It's a crisis. It's a time of escalating grief. It's a time of realizing that the hustle and bustle you were so used to, things slow down, and now all of a sudden you have so much time to think about how, man, it would just be nice to just have a day that I was getting up and taking the kids to school and going to the office and going through my routines. And, that Cheryl that just always frustrates me with the silly things she says, I really miss that, Cheryl, and I miss being frustrated in that way. So we are grieving a lot of these things. And as practitioners, I know specifically what I communicate oftentimes to my clients when I'm working with them is we have research and textbooks and books on grief and what that looks like in the stages. But at the end of the day, it's very different for every person. And it's really about adjusting what it is you expect of yourself. And those adjustments may be small. You start 2 minutes, you start 5 minutes, and 2 weeks from now, it's 20 minutes. Does that answer, or is that helpful, Katie, for what you were kind of going for?
Yeah, that was great. I think so much of that resonated with me. There was so much that I was just like absorbing. I was fully in. I like get it. I think the hardest things I'm seeing with my clients is, one of the coping skills I always preach to my clients, the importance of having a support system. And now it's like, oh, we're disconnected. Now, virtually, obviously not, but that's different. But the one thing that I really loved, actually, there's two main things that I really loved, is one is how the expectations. I have a lot of clients who are jumping into new coping skills. I had one today who took up oil painting, which is amazing, but then expected herself to be Picasso, and was very frustrated when she wasn't. And so I love that you're highlighting that. Don't do that, but also give yourself grace and learn, and we're not jumping in. And the other thing I love is the idea of being intentional and sitting down and just observing my children and writing details. I love that for so many reasons. First of all, just the intentional part of it, the way it rewires the brain and all that. But I love also that, right, that's kind of like a concrete document I can give to them and be like, this is like the quarantine diaries. I love that. That is so cute. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything else you want to share with us today?
I don't think so. Just that I think you had mentioned it, as providers and practitioners. I know there are going to be RPTs and just other therapists out there that are going to be watching this, and we do still have a network with each other. You and I are connected. Check in on your friends. Check in on the other, again, frontline workers, because we're organizing and trying to make sense of this experience just as everybody else is. So there's a human aspect to everything that's happening right now that's very different. If you're trying to differentiate, okay, my role as therapist is to hold space for all of this. Meanwhile, I'm trying to make sense of all of this as well.
Yeah.
I'm working from home. You're working from home. So just that aspect of normal, again, looks very different. And and it is okay, and it's okay to be frustrated, and it's okay to feel overwhelmed, and it's okay also to have moments where you maybe experience, it's not that bad, or I am thankful for this, or I was really consistent and I did these walks, or I made and created these paintings and I did that for a week, and then I got away from it for a couple of days. That's fine. But lots of checking in, although we don't have the opportunity to be face to face as frequently with our support networks. I think one of the things, and this is just from what I'm seeing and so far, is I think that this will be written about in a way that represents how more connected we were during this, how we as human beings utilized the technology we had at this point in time to, I've talked to my parents more in the last couple of weeks than I probably had in the last 6 months. We're not estranged. We talk frequently. But I just call them, it's for me is putting me back in that role of almost being back in school, where I would call my mom every couple of days, just randomly. Hey, what's going on? Hey, how are you guys? So receiving that part of this, I think, is pretty powerful too, and being open to it. And it is okay as an adult to say, I want my mom, I want my dad, I want to talk to these adults in my life, my friends, I want this, I want that. I'll leave you with this. I had a client I was seeing last week, and older adolescent, and it really, for me, was impactful in framing what it is we're doing right now as clinicians, but where we're at environmentally, systemically, culturally. This client said, I said, how are you doing? And they said, all right. And I said, well, what is it that's bothering you? And they said, I want it to go back to normal. I want to see my friends again. I want them to be right there in front of me. And these moments as clinicians, when we find ourselves not knowing what to say, I just paused and took that in, and I said, so do I.
Yeah.
I want that too. And there is a part of all of this that, because it's so active right now, there are parts of it that we're not going to be able to solve. There are parts of it that are going to be organized over time. So it is okay as a parent, as a clinician, to hold space and say, I want that too, and be vulnerable in that way. That is probably therapeutically, relationally, one of the healthiest responses you could provide anyone right now in your life. So,
yeah. Thank you so much again. I cannot thank you enough. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we will be back. I hope you guys took something away from this. I think, like Andrew said, we're just kind of all in this together, figuring it out. And I hope, if anything, it made you feel that you're not alone, you're not abnormal, and we all just miss normal and are grieving. So I'll see you guys back on Thursday at noon to learn more tips. Have a great day.